Hello, and welcome to Everyday Simple Somatics, a podcast dedicated to helping you find healing through beginning to listen to your body's natural wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Baker. Before we get into our material today, I want to just talk to you for a second about my first 3 episodes and then this one moving forward. So first time podcaster here. And I think I had it in my head like, oh man, people sound so smart on podcasts. They always say the right thing. And so I want to write down exactly what I'm going to say to make sure I say it in the exact way I want to say it and make sure, obviously, too, that it stays within 10 minutes and I can get chatty when I'm just chatting. And so I scripted it out. You probably could tell that, especially if you were watching the YouTube channel. So moving forward, my husband so kind and so lovingly told me, hey, Christine, this is really good information. He was like, but the thing that makes your teaching engaging is that it's conversational and your little quirks and all of that shows up. And so, let's just go back to that. Just be yourself. You don't have to do all this scripting and making it sound perfect. And so that's what we're going to do moving forward. I have some bullet points of what I'm going to talk about to you in this podcast and future podcasts. But my hope is that I can just bring my personality to this information instead of just sharing it maybe like a textbook, which might have been kind of what our first 3 episodes were like. So that's how we're moving forward. Bullet point, Christine. So today we are going to talk about nervous system regulation. So if you remember yesterday, we talked about these 3 protective responses that our nervous system does, this fight, flight, and freeze. And as you were listening to that, you may have been thinking oh yeah, I totally recognize myself in this one or in both of these or all 3, but what do I do about it? How do I not live in a constant state of wanting to yell at the person across from me or wanting to run away from the conversation or feeling like a zombie all day? Well, that is what this podcast is really going to help you understand. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Christine Baker. I have been a trauma therapist for over 13 years. I am also a somatic experiencing practitioner, which just means that I'm a big believer that trauma is stored in our body, and therefore the body has to be a part of the healing journey. Normally, this podcast will be 10-minute episodes giving you a specific somatic practice to be used in specific mental health or relational moments of need. But this first 10 episodes is what I'm calling the essential foundations. And these are going to be kind of the basics of your nervous system before we get into those practical ways to help support it. So this is one of those episodes. If this sounds like something that you might be interested in, I'd love to encourage you to hit the like button or subscribe to this podcast or YouTube channel, because I don't want you to miss episodes. And it also really helps, those extra clicks really help other people find these resources too. Okay, so let's jump in. What is regulation? I want you to think about regulation as just this natural swing between activation and rest. So Peter Levine has this beautiful concept of pendulation. And he actually kind of has an image of it, which is the infinity symbol. And you may have noticed this, my logo for the Somatic Wellness Collective and for SWC Media, which is what this podcast and YouTube channel is kind of housed under, is an infinity symbol. And it's because I so strongly believe in this concept that the way that the goal of regulation is this gentle, flexible dance between activation and rest. It's kind of like I say this all the time in my teaching, it's these gentle rolling hills of activation, rest. I mean, perfect example, someone cuts you off in traffic, you need activation. Once you realize you're no longer under threat, you can rest back down. And that is what a healthy nervous system looks like. And we know that this is true because we see it in infants, right? They get upset, they cry, they receive comfort, and then they settle. They have these very understandable and predictable ways of activation and rest. It makes me actually think a little bit about our little Ellie girl. When she was an infant, she had these insane witching hour, and it was worse. It was between 7 and 9. She would just cry, and there was nothing we could do to help settle her. And I remember talking to our pediatrician. This was before I knew anything about nervous system stuff. And I remember talking to our pediatrician and saying hey, she's great during the day. And then these 2 hours, she's inconsolable. What do we do? And I remember her saying well, that energy has to come out somewhere. And I just think that that's such a great explanation of this. that is how our bodies are meant to move through this life. That is how our nervous systems are meant to move through this life, is there does have to be expression of activation. And then there does have to be rest to help support the next level, the next round of activation, right? Like nervous system regulation is not about being calm all the time. It's about being able to do this dance in between in between activation and settling. And so how does this get dysregulated? So we can do it as infants, but then as grown-ups, we're kind of clunky and trying to figure things out, right? Well, I think a big part of it is as adults, we really override these patterns, these natural patterns, right? So our body says that I need rest because I'm tired and my body feels heavy. It's getting all of these cues of my body saying it's time to rest. But guess what? I push through. I keep working. I keep hustling. We also, on the other side of things, avoid the activation. And so maybe, for instance, we're in a situation that is bringing up some anxiety for us and our foot is bouncing. It's like having a flight response, and it's your body saying, I need to move. And what do we do so often? Instead of actually saying, hey, can I take a little pause and come back to this conversation and actually moving our body, giving our body what it needs, we sit there and we keep bouncing that leg until eventually your body realizes that you're not going to give it what it needs and you most likely zone out. And so we are avoiding rest when we need it, and we are avoiding activation and the expression of that activation when we really need to be engaging it. And so as adults, we're trying to control these natural cycles instead of learning to listen to them as this is my body's wisdom, right? So that's the first thing. That's what I think regulation actually is. It's not about just being these like calm yogis all the time. It's about being able to do that dance between activation and rest. So that's number one. Number two, I think that there are like 3 core principles when it comes to thinking about regulation, nervous system regulation. Number one, I've kind of already spoken to. It's not about being constantly calm. A healthy system is really dynamic. I mean, think about heart rate variability, right? Like the goal is not to have this super low heart rate all the time. The goal is to be able to move between higher heart rate and more settled, calm heart rate. Flexibility between the states, right? Number two, small steps work best. Peter Levine also has a term for this, which is titration. And so we don't need to overwhelm the system because that's just going to cause shutdown. We just need gentle changes and small changes, and that is actually going to have a huge impact on the system. And later on, I'm going to give you a little exercise to do that's going to prove that to you, I hope. But yeah, like the idea of if I'm feeling a lot of fight energy, I don't need to go to 100 and go to my, local boxing arena and put on boxing gloves and for an hour punch a punching bag. No, like I think honestly, if you're noticing a lot of fight energy, what might be enough is just for you to really be in tune with your body and your sensations, and then to bring your hands into fists very slowly. That may be enough. Like it doesn't have to be these like out of control, dramatic interventions, because that intensity actually shows the nervous system, whoa, what's happening? And then it feels under threat again. Versus if we give it baby steps, that helps our nervous system see, well, I could handle this little baby step. I guess maybe we could try the next one, right? And so like it really is teaching your body a new way, right? So titration, not flooding. And then finally, number 3, regulation happens in relationship, okay? And there's 3 primary ways, I think. Obviously, in relationship with other people, which is, there's a term for that, co-regulation. We know that that's true because have you ever had a stressful day and then you go see a really safe person to you, whether that be your spouse or partner or a best friend, and they're super calm? Just by being around them, you notice your shoulders start to drop, right? So that's co-regulation with another person. Relationship with our environment. We're going to see that a lot through the skill of orienting, which we will talk about a ton in this podcast. But the idea of that is our nervous system is always scanning for threat and safety. And if we can be intentionally looking for signs of safety in our environment, that's going to help regulate our nervous system. So we're having a relationship with the safety in our environment. And then finally, the relationship with our own body, which is truly what my hope is for this podcast, is to teach you how to have a relationship with your own body, right? And to treat your body as your partner in mental wellness and recovery instead of like this thing you're fighting against, okay? Connection is key. I can't tell you how many times I've said to friends, to colleagues, to clients, like, we do not heal in isolation. Like, it just doesn't happen. We have to engage the people, places, and what's happening inside to actually move forward. So I told you I was going to give you a little exercise to try to prove to you that subtle changes actually do have quite an impact on our nervous system state. So let's do that together now, if it feels okay for you. So I'd love to invite you to just find a comfortable seated position. And then just take a couple seconds to just notice your current state. Are you feeling more calm? Are you feeling more activation? Just kind of seeing what's there. And then I want to offer you a very simple breathing pattern. And it's going to be a very gentle invitation, right? Okay, so we're going to inhale normally, like you normally would. And then I just want you to do a slightly longer exhale than your inhale was, even if it's just by a second or two. And then I want you to just notice what happens inside when you do that. Okay, so we'll do an inhale and then exhale. Yeah, like I notice my jaw relaxing, shoulders dropping. Try again. Inhale. Exhale slightly longer. But I hope you can see, like, even just extending your exhale by a second or two impacts your nervous system and your body. And it's just gentle. We're not forcing anything. We're just giving a little more space. I think that that's so much about what this work is. How do I give my body and my nervous system a little more space to recognize the safety around me? So that is the basics of nervous system regulation. I want to invite you to come back to this YouTube channel or this podcast tomorrow, because we're going to be talking about this really important concept from the somatic world, which is the window of tolerance. I will actually have some graphics tomorrow. So tomorrow may be a good day to watch on YouTube, just so that you can see the graphics that I'm showing on the screen. If this podcast has been helpful to you, if tomorrow's topic sounds interesting to you, again, I'd really love to invite you to like and subscribe on whatever platform you are listening to this on, and also extend the invitation if this is something that you'd like to learn more about. I'd love to invite you to the Somatic Wellness Collective. This is my online monthly learning community where we dive a bit deeper into somatic wellness and nervous system regulation. I kind of have explained that the podcast is kind of like your compass. It's pointing you in the right direction. And then the collective is more like the complete map and having me as your guide to learn more about your nervous system and how to support it. So if that's something you're interested in, link is going to be in the show notes. And remember, guys, your body has innate wisdom. We just have to learn how to listen to it. And that's what I'm here for. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.